Hi everyone, and welcome to the CloudEd Digital Learning in Practice Information session. Today we're going to have a look at the strategies and approaches that CloudEd uses for staff development or professional development, and our courses are QTC endorsed, so that means that teachers can gain hours credit towards their maintenance of their professional development. Okay, just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started in earnest. If you'd like to ask a question, and you have a look at the top of your screen here, there's a little fellow, it says set status. If you click on that, it will raise your hand. Also, you're probably familiar with the chat pod here on your left. If you click in the little bar down the bottom, you can key in a message and we'll receive this. If it's a question you'd like to ask, please feel free at any time to either put your hand up, in which case I can give you voice, or click in the chat pod for your question. Okay, so just a little bit about me before we get started. I've been in education for 24 years, 15 of those in digital learning, digital teaching and learning, and also in professional development and workforce development for teachers, and I'm also a certified change manager. So what I've done is used all those skills and that experience to put together some hopefully interactive and engaging courses for you. So let's have a look at those courses. And the first thing that we need to have a look at, of course, is what is digital teaching and learning. So for the digital learning side of it, we have a lot of extra resources and tools out there that teachers and students can use. And so digital learning is about learning on the internet, on any device, anywhere, anytime. Learning is certainly personal. Learning is adaptable and it's dynamic, so often instead of having a starting point and a structure through a class, it could end up anywhere, depending on how the learners are adapting to their learning environment. So that means that digital teaching is learner-centered, it is facilitative. So instead of being the sage on the stage, we're very much the guides on the side. I know that you've heard that all before, but it's definitely true in digital teaching, and students will expect a collaborative and connected environment. They'll expect their learning to be varied and the teaching strategies to be varied, and they expect that teachers will use technological affordances. Now, learners won't know what that means, but rather than just focusing on the technology, an affordance is an action that you can perform with it that will improve the learning. So what do we need digital teaching and learning? So we need to meet the needs of learners in all contexts for the 21st century. And when I say all contexts, I don't mean just learning. I mean in the real world, in jobs. They need to be able to communicate, collaborate and use teamwork effectively, not just face-to-face, but digitally as well. They need to have creativity and imagination in the workplace, be able to think critically, problem solve and make their own decisions. They need to know how to get information, where to find it, be self-directed, flexible and adaptable depending on the environment at the time, and there are more leadership skills required now than ever before. So to meet those needs, learners will expect, as I said, to use the internet and to use digital learning. They expect the learning to be relevant and authentic to what their needs will be and what is currently out there. So what they're doing at home, if they're using social media or even imaging sites or something like that, they will expect to use those in their learning as well. They don't want their learning to be something else that's not realistic in the real world. This will allow them to build their self-efficacy personalisation and giving learners control will build their self-efficacy. Building self-efficacy allows learners to embrace their learning and go ahead, forge ahead and set even higher goals for themselves. Without self-efficacy, learning is difficult. They expect that they will be able to use technology effectively for their learning. They want you to model the best practice. That means digital literacy and digital communication. They want to be able to use that effectively, and they should be able to know what lurks out there. So that's up to us to show digital learners digital citizenship. And they expect us to guide them and facilitate them in their learning. So that's how we need to meet learner needs. So what skills do teachers need? I'll just maximise this one for you because this is a very important slide. This is the TPAC methodology. TPAC was first designed in 2006 by Mishra and Kohler, and you will see that the goal of learning technology is to aim for that centrepiece. So right here where I'm pointing. Okay, so that centrepiece just doesn't focus on technology skills. It focuses on pedagogical skills, so skills that the teachers use, and also content knowledge. So the framework was first designed as a staff development for teachers going into digital teaching and learning. And the error that most teachers make is to focus only on technology and not that centre point that I'm talking about here. So that is the most fundamental and important part of learning, of teaching with technologies. And as I said, it's often left behind. So we've talked about technological affordances. So pedagogical affordances of technology are similar in that they're the actions that the learners can perform with the technology that improves learning. That should be the key focus of teachers. So I'll just go back to our screen and make sure that we don't have any questions in the pod. No, we're good. Okay, so that's a little bit of heavy theory behind what we do. But it's necessary to know why we need to improve or change our processes to accommodate today's learners. So now we're talking about pedagogies, or the ways that teachers facilitate learning. And we've just got a little word out there on the right, the types of learner-centred activities that are now better in the digital teaching and learning environment, such as Socratic questioning. That's a really important one because the idea here is that it's not really the answer that's important, it's the pathway to getting there. And you can appreciate in digital learning and digital teaching there is so much out there. It's important for learners to know how to find the information and get to that end result, which is potentially some answers to the questions. Assessment rubric is another learner-centred pedagogy that is more or less like a table that indicates to learners where they need to get to, and so they can match their knowledge and skills against the assessment rubric and see whether they have any gaps. At younger ages, the teacher can help them find perhaps some gaps in their learning and improve. Project-based learning speaks for itself, so too does inquiry-based. They're all, as I said, learner-centred. And scaffolding is important in digital teaching and learning because of the so much information that students need to step through it slowly, step by step, so that there's an understanding at each stage. Now, those learners who are gifted and talented and move forward quickly, that scaffolding will, of course, be at faster pace. And social learning, collaborating and interacting is the idea now in digital teaching and learning, and will help learners get those skills for the future. Let's have a look at Bloom's digital taxonomy. This one is, I'll just once again go to the full screen view. This one has been adapted for digital, and you can see now that the most important thing here is creating. Learners creating content is seen to be a bit like the questioning techniques. It's the journey to creating this content. It's them filtering back into the learning area, and so others can perhaps download that content and then redesign it or remix it and share it again. So everybody is learning in their own way and adding onto the content. And so creating content is, as I said, where we aim to get our learners to. Evaluating and analysing, and another steps that learners should be encouraged to go to as well. I'll just go back to our review. Great. So this is a pretty text-heavy screen, but it's an important one. I've selected the key areas for digital teaching and learning in a site. Are we there yet? Are we ready to transform our sites to digital teaching and learning? So I'm not going to read all this text out to you. I know that you can read yourself. But have a look at the items on the left. They are the key areas that we need to focus on to move our sites forward to digital teaching and learning. And in the right column there is a description of the transformation in each of those categories. So for the vision, if you have an innovative and inclusive and future-looking vision, then you are in relation to digital teaching and learning, then you are most of the way there for digital teaching and learning in the vision. There are 5 steps, so let's just have a look at this poll I've put together for you. I'll just maximise it. Okay, so for each of the areas in digital teaching and learning, I have ranked from foundational, which is just the beginning, to transformative, which is, as we said in that second column, a description of best practice, or that you're there. Okay, so just like you to have a go at that poll, and just think about your educational site and the status that you're at the moment. So with digital teaching and learning, are you at the foundational stage? Have you transformed fully to digital teaching and learning? Meaning, so a description of transformative in relation to a whole of site approach is that everybody in the teaching staff are using quality teaching and learning with digital teaching and learning, and it's evident throughout the whole of the site, implementation and change. So what that means is that you really effectively have every teacher in school using digital teaching and learning effectively. The learners are using it. The parents know about it. They're involved in the strategy, and everybody has input. Okay, that's great. Most sites will be around emergent or functioning, because it is a pretty new thing to be involved in digital teaching and learning, especially if the site is large. But with the change management practices that CloudEd uses, it targets all teachers in the process so that they don't feel marginalised and they do feel included. And so we also assist them in the mentoring process, and they can also input into the learning as they go along and share that with others. So that's good. We have one transformative school, that's fantastic, and we have most people at Emergent, which can be expected. Okay, just have a look at the professional learning one before we move on. So if you are at the transformation stage with professional learning, that means that all the professional development that's undertaken in relation to digital teaching and learning is aimed towards the vision or the strategies that come out of the vision and reaching those goals. So we know what we need, we know where our gaps are, and we can approach that in a logical and useful way by targeting professional development for needs. If I just bring that gap analysis template back, this is just an example in one of the courses in the mentoring course, which is course 4A. We provide a one-on-one mentoring to teachers, and before they enter that, they do a little gap analysis of their skills. So the first part here is just showing them how to use the template, and then in the second part, move that up a little bit here, we can see that this particular teacher would like to learn about inquiry-based learning, blogs and a personal learning space. They're going to use Blogger and Google Sites. They'd like to know that by the 30th of April this year, and it's mapped to Objective 1. So then later on, we will end up with a plan for that teacher, and then CloudEd will come in and address that plan one-on-one with the teacher. So in this course there is 1 day of training where we put all this together and an understanding of why we need to put it together, and then over the period of the remainder of the assessment, or at least semester, or at least one semester, we go through that and on a one-on-one. That course is particularly useful for teachers who are advanced, who'd like to further extend their knowledge, or teachers who are beginning in this area and don't feel confident to work on their own. In both cases it works really well. Okay, so no questions at the moment. Good, so I'll move on then. So why do we need a strategic approach to this at all? Why can't we just say, here are the tools, you have all done a teaching degree, you should know about pedagogy, off you go. And the reason is because this is new to a lot of people and they don't know where to start. The other thing is, for an approach to be sustainable, it needs to be strategic. Digital will change almost daily. If I said to you, let's all learn Facebook now, and we'll learn it for teaching, and we'll learn how to make closed groups, then that's fine. We'll be right for a few weeks. What happens if the next best thing comes along and everybody wants to use that? So do we jump from tool to tool? Is that where we should direct our professional development? The answer is certainly not, because that is not sustainable. What about in another scenario? What about if we have one specialist in the school and they're headhunted and they go to another school, and you lose that specialist who was doing all your training and all your mentoring and support? What do you do then? Have you got a plan for that person to leave in case they leave? How do you keep that person yourself? How do you make sure that they are getting their needs met as well? So in a strategic approach, we will be looking forward, and that's what I put there in the left column. We will be future-proofing. I'd just like to jump to a very short video and show you what it means to future-proof your site. Okay, so this is Silverton Public School. It's only a couple of minutes long, so I'll just play that for you now.
I think having a vision is the crux of what we're doing, and also the longevity of probably having the strong leadership in the school has made a big difference. I've been principal here over almost 22 years now, and so the vision was created very early on in the 1990s and had a time to embed and establish itself along the journey. And I think the vision here is such that we want the child to be the centre of the learning, and I think that's really important. I want the teachers to be co-learners with the children. I think that's an important aspect of it. And we talk about lifelong learning, but I think it's more about authentic lifelong learning and making a difference to these kids so long as so in the future they can make a difference to the world. So having a vision that child-centred, authentic, co-created with the teachers is the crux to any sort of vision, and having a strong vision is the easy part. It's getting everyone else on board is more difficult, and I think that's one of the things we've been able to do successfully. It's easy for one person in the school to have the vision and own the vision, but unless it's shared with everyone on in the school, that includes the leaders, the teachers and the parents, it's not going to go anywhere. And the crux is to get buy-in, and the way we got buy-in in the early days is we have 7 principals in our school, and the principals are the non-negotiables in our school. And when things are not working as well as they should be, or the vision's not directed the way we want it to go, the critical conversations come back to those 7 principles. And those 7 principles are around coming back to student-centred learning, working as communities and co-designing the curriculum with the children. And there are times when things don't work out, but at least the understanding is that this is the way this school is heading, this is the way the ship's moving, and the ship's heading in the same direction. And getting everyone on board comes through successes, celebrating the successes, and celebrating the joy in the children's faces and seeing them learn and progress. And that's an important element of the vision going in the same direction. Getting buy-in takes time, but it also means that it can't come from one person, it's got to come from everybody within the school. And to get that, it means trusting your staff, trusting your other leaders to drive that vision, and trusting the parents to be on board.
So that's a very powerful message. It was short but powerful. There's a couple of really important points in there. One of them is inclusive and empowering. The fact that it was related to the site, that it was authentic and realistic, and that the people in the organisation, it's a bottom-up approach. Okay, so there are your tricks. How do we go about that? I just have a question for you. If you wouldn't mind just popping your answer in the chat pod. I want to know, in relation to teaching strategies, if your teachers have Google-proofed their strategies. So what do I mean by that is, if I said to you, what is the population of Australia, unless you've just looked at it, you probably have a rough idea, but if you wanted to know for sure, what would you do? You would Google it. Okay, I can answer that for you. But what happens if I Google-proof my questions? In other words, what happens if I make it a little bit more difficult for you to get to an answer, and I put a few problems in there for you to solve on the way? Now, you may use Google, but you might need to get all different parts or do a lot of research before you can respond to something. So that's a Google proofing strategy. Okay, and it's getting up to that content creation and knowledge building that we want the learners to get to. So I digressed a little bit, but it was important for me to mention that, and moving forward back into this strategic approach and making sure that all your teachers are on board at the time, including those who are lagging behind a little bit. That's what we want, and that is a sustainable way to go about digital teaching and learning at your site. Okay, so one of the things that CloudEd does is put a change management approach into assisting sites to build a strategy and then implementing it. So if I just maximize this one to the full screen again, I should just wait a couple of seconds because I know sometimes we have latency issues. I just want to go back to the types of teachers or their beliefs that you may have within your school site. So if you can see here in the green area, the first 2.5% of any site, approximately, so this is Roger's innovation adoption innovation curve, so the first 2.5% will be your innovators. So that is only a very small percent, isn't it? So if 2.5% of your teachers in a large school are innovators, and along with them the next group are the early adopters, so they're only 13.5% of the people in your school, that means that you only have 16% of staff who can grab this innovation now and move forward with it. Okay, so the first innovators are motivated and they tolerate setbacks, so if something doesn't work straight away, they're not going to worry about it. The early adopters, they like change. They're happy to move forward quickly and grab it and trial it. And have a look at this chasm here. There is a big gap between this early group here and the next group, who are the early majority. Now they, and believe me, are your key group. They are well respected at your site. They are usually people who have a lot of experience in teaching. People listen to them. People go to them for advice. You really have to market to these people. Okay, so just bear that in mind. We want to get these people on board. Once you get the 34% of your early majority on board, your late majority are going to see them on board and they will follow along. So already you're going to have the next 68% of your people on board with your new strategy. The laggards, there are a lot of work in laggards, and they can't be ignored because they can be very vocal. They need usually one-on-one mentoring, and you have to prove what's in it for them. Sometimes you have to acknowledge that they're not going to change. They might have other reasons for not changing. They might be close to retirement. They might have other philosophical reasons that they do not want to change. But you can use a lot of energy here on the last 16%. So if we end up with all these on board, we're doing pretty well. So the next thing is, how do we go about that? Well, the idea is that CloudEd has trialled ProSci. ProSci is a change management methodology, and if you have a look down the bottom here in the right hand side, we're looking at an acronym called ADKAR, ADKAR. So if we step people through this change, and we start with awareness, there are processes and tools that we will use, such as communication channels, then the desire phase. So this is the what's in it for them. It might be a range of things. Sometimes the desire is that they might improve their prospects for career development. Then, and only then, are we going to knowledge and ability. This is a key point. Often sites, educational sites, will go straight to knowledge and ability. They'll go straight to the training, but they haven't addressed the awareness and desire. So how do you expect people to move to knowledge and ability if they don't want to change yet, if they don't know what's in it for them, and they really don't know why they have to change? So they're key points. If you step individuals through this process, you have more likelihood of getting these early and late majority people on board with your strategy. Especially the early majority, remember that I said you need to market to. This is this awareness and desire phase, critical at the commencement of your strategy. I'll just go back now to check if we have any questions in the pod. No, there's a lot of my talking here, and I do apologise for that, but I think it's really important for you to understand the methodologies that we use behind all of our training courses. So, if we have a look at the educator role in all of this, you might say, well, yes, we need to move forward, but nothing is different. But now is different. If we have a look at this little diagram on the right side, which is a continuum, we have all the different types of learners and their needs. There was one, when I first saw this diagram, something was answered for me that I've been pondering for a long time, and that is, if university students don't always get on board with digital teaching or digital learning, why can't they? They are intelligent people, they are independent learners often. Why is it that sometimes they just can't use digital teaching and learning environments? And the answer is that they might be independent learners, but they might not be independent users of technology or online learning. So that it has nothing to do with intelligence, it's just the way that learners learn. So their needs are different in digital teaching and learning, depending on their stage at not only independent learners, but also novice and expert learners, and also novice and expert or experienced online learners. So just think about that. Why is it that sometimes people don't cotton on to what we're trying to use, or the tools or the methods that we're using in digital teaching and learning? And this is very much informs why that happens to us. The other thing that I would like to, or the myth that I would like to expel here is the one about digital immigrants and digital natives. There really is no such thing. It was first touted by Prensky a long time ago, and it's been disproven in many research projects by recognised researchers. It's still around though. You will still hear teachers say, oh, I'm not a digital native, I can't do this. It's not the case. What is the case is that learners and teachers are novice, intermediate, or independent in digital environments. If you use that to describe your teachers and learners, you'd be more likely to get somewhere with implementation than trying to focus on this, which actually can be damaging to learners, because if you're saying that everybody 18 years and under is a digital native, then some people are going to miss out, and that's unfortunate. Okay, so we're going back again. Moving on, if we're thinking about novice, intermediate and independent learners, and we're considering our teachers as learners now, I'm just going to full screen this one for you. How are we going to help those teachers move forward? So we know that our innovators and early adopters are just going to try this out, they're going to make errors, they're going to fix it up, and they're going to move on. But what about the others? What about the early and late majority? They're not going to do that. They're going to want reassurance, they're going to want reinforcement, they're going to need to be in an environment where they're not feeling silly, that they may not know everything straight away. And by the way, do teachers need to know all technologies? Well, the answer is no. How can they? No teacher can know every technology, but what they do need to know is that they need to know how to learn. And one of the best ways to do that is in a professional community of practice. I've used this in practice for at least 3 or 4 years. And even with the most novice of teachers in their digital learning environment, they blossom. And they are my best advocates, can I say? If we have a look at this worded out on the right here, It's empowering. Communities of practice provide reinforcement purely of the nature of other professionals helping each other. It can be scaffolded. Good practices are modelled. So your innovators and early adopters might jump in here early on and show all the other teachers what they're doing, and then they might get some self-efficacy or build self-efficacy, and they might think, well, okay, I know this good tool, maybe my son used it or somebody's used it, I'd like to trial it in the community of practice and get some feedback, and all of a sudden you've got all these people working together to improve learning. Now, for those principals and managers who want to move quickly, a professional community of practice is the best way to do it, because if you've got your early adopter or innovator in your school, which might be one, might be three, they can move at only a certain pace because they have their own classes to teach. But if you harness them in a professional community of practice where you have all your teachers together, working together, those skills will be distributed faster. Okay, so this is one way to move forward quickly. So just going back to the ADCAR model, because it's so important to this process, going along with our professional community of practice, alongside it is our change management plan. That's going to be, remember, our awareness, our communication strategy, our desire building. That could be one-on-one conversations. It could be an understanding from the awareness stage of, okay, I need to do this. It's going to enhance my career. It's going to improve my my work. It's going to make my job better, less stressful. And some of you may have read the piece I just did recently called The Remedy to Stress is Structure. So just thinking now, we've got our vision, we've got our strategy, we're building our community of practice, we've got our change management running alongside it, we've got training plans for our staff, we've got coaching plans, and all along we've got our educational management who are the sponsors of all this, and they are going to build their coalition of sponsors who are the senior people in this at the site, or a group of maybe early adopters and innovators who will pick this up and run with it, and off we go. So at pace, I'd say that you could get close to that transformation stage within a year. You'd be more than well into it 6 to 8 months. So instead of just chugging along, you'll almost have this done. And I think that's really important. Not only that, with your strategy developed, if this new best gadget comes along, you'll be able to just slot it in with your community of practice and everybody can learn it. If you're not happy with the way the strategy is moving, you can revisit it and change your goals. But once it's there, it's much easier for you. Okay, so I just wanted to show you, before we discuss this slide, remind you about the ADCAR approach in another video. How are we going for time? Yes, we're okay. And then I'll just show you how CloudEd does this in summary. Okay, so firstly, let's have a look at this video. Thank you for watching that. It's a very powerful video, that one, so and it is in one of our courses. We have a lead course where we develop the coalition of sponsors for the educational managers, and they learn how to put together the tools. The idea that CloudEd follows is that unlike other professional development where the person comes in, they deliver the training and sometimes you never see them again, we leave behind the approaches, the tools, and also an offer of continuing assistance through mentoring. So I'm about to show you some of our resources just briefly, and what happens is the learners will log on to those resources and they will never be removed. So as I update things, they will also be updated so that they can use them in their professional practice. Okay, so let me just go ahead now and show you some of the resources that we use. So I'll just share my screen. I just need to wait a few seconds because once again there might be some latency issues there. So if you can't see this screen, or actually if you can, let's have a little bit of an interactive session here. If you can, just put yes in the chat pod please, if you can see the CloudEd website here. Thanks, Dennis. Good. Okay, so we're pushing that out to you, and so this is the courses page. So if you click on courses and then the course list and services, you'll end up at this page. And we're running the first course in Gosford next Thursday, but we'll also be running other courses on site as requested, and there'll also be online courses through Adobe Connect. And just on that point, I can't thank ExpertCast enough for providing me with this room today to show you CloudEd courses. They're very professional unit, ExpertCast, so if you ever need anything in Adobe Connect, please contact ExpertCast. I'll just put their name in the chat pod because it starts with an X. Okay, I'll do that for you. Okay, so here we have our little pop-up help. So I'm often online here. I can answer your questions immediately, so I'll just hide that for you. You can see the courses that are QTC approved because they have the BOSDES symbol. So that means that they're endorsed, and any teachers who are maintaining their professional development at the moment, and those teachers are those who did their degrees post 2004. So those who studied their teaching degrees prior to that won't have to maintain their professional development hours until 2018, but that's fast approaching, so these courses can count towards that as well. So what I've done here is slowly built on the strategic approach to digital teaching and learning, but while we've done that, we've also included strategies and tools that can be used in practice now. So it's not all theory, it's interactive, and there's only a little bit of theory associated with it because we actually work through what we need to know. So during each course we will do that, and you can download the brochure by clicking on each of those. Okay, so I'll move on to the first resource. This is for Create a Vision for Digital Teaching and Learning. This is a wiki site. It's an engaging site. We've got here the objectives, which have to be stated because once again it's Board of Studies. But you can see here I've already used a tool called Symbaloo, which houses resources. This is a Web2 tool, so it's free. I've used Symbaloo for a long time and students love it. So you'll learn how to use, as I said, tools such as those. You can contribute your own. So we are not the holders of all the knowledge in relation to digital tools. We know that you have a lot yourself, and you can input and make these PD sessions rich. Now, because this is a wiki, we always invite comments. We've got a little bit of a humorous approach to Bloom's taxonomy here for you to read, and also, as I said, we invite comments on each of our wiki pages. So as we move through this course, you can see here on the right we have each part of the course has its own resources. Okay, so and our most recent courses are set up on Google Sites. Here's a little video you just watched because this is our lead teachers course, remembering that those maintaining proficient and highly accomplished status can also do lead courses and they can count towards PD hours over the maintenance period. Here we're using a little what we call back channeling feature. This is called Today's Meet, and any questions, comments, a bit like Twitter, that teachers would like to put up here can be captured and addressed throughout the session. The good thing about Today's Meet is that you can actually print these off or send them in PD format to the participants so it's not lost. Unlike Twitter, I know you can go and search a hashtag, but you have to try and screen capture and do all those other fancy things with it. But this we can actually send to participants. So you can interact. There's one of these on every page. So if we go back here, this is one again. Once again, is Today's Meet. So that's just the way that we deliver our courses. In the professional community of practice, we also put a digital component in because it's digital teaching and learning. So we will be using Connect, Google Hangouts, depends what the site would like. And on that point, CloudEd can customise courses to cater for site requirements. For example, if a site is a Google Apps for Education site, we can make sure that we use Google Apps for Education and demonstrate and model best practice in relation to that as well. Okay, so just in summary, CloudEd uses a strategic approach. We do that because it's more sustainable for sites. It's not just a now way of doing things, it's futuristic. We use a change management strategy. Once again, we've got sustainability there. We need to get our teachers on board right through to the laggards if we can get there, but certainly all but 16%. And it's inclusive. Everybody gets to own this and they are empowered to participate, including the parents, and we seek feedback on a regular basis. The educational management are the sponsors of this, and they build their coalition of sponsors in the way that they would like it built so that they can move forward with the holistic approach at the site. And once again, the professional community of practice is inclusivity. If I go back to ADCAR and say awareness, desire, if the organisation says that the right answer is because we need digital teaching and learning, and you say that to your teachers, that doesn't always work for them. The right answer is inclusivity. That is the right answer. Okay. If I have missed something, please feel free to let me know, or I'm just making sure that, there you go, there's the that's the company name for the people who have graciously allowed me to use Adobe Connect today. If you would like to contact them, if Max is around, if you could put your URL, thank you Max. He's been a trusty background guy in case we have technical problems, so I really appreciate Max helping out today. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me at CloudEd, and on that point I'll just ask if anybody has before we sign off and stop this recording. Thanks Max. Max has put up his ExpertCast website. I suggest you go and have a look at it anyway because they are, I've worked with ExpertCast for quite a number of years now in a formal project, and they've been fantastic. So okay, so we might finish there Max. I'll just click the recording button.